The leather wallet slipped from his coat like a secret ready to be told. Serena bent down to pick it up, her bare feet steady on the muddy ground beside the lake. Just a simple act of kindness. Nothing more. But when the wallet fell open in her hands, everything changed. There, tucked behind crisp $100 bills and platinum credit cards, was a photograph. A little girl with bright eyes and tangled hair, holding a faded ribbon. The same ribbon Serena had kept in a wooden box under her bed for 15 years. The same face she saw every morning in her cracked mirror. Her breath caught in her throat. The world seemed to stop spinning. Even the wind through the wheat fields fell silent. "Where did you get this?" she whispered, her voice barely audible above the gentle lapping of the lake water. "Have you ever discovered something from your past in the most impossible place? Something that made you question everything you thought you knew about your own life?" That's exactly what happened to Serena Dovell on that golden afternoon in Ravenwood Hills. Kalen Armand, the billionaire whose wallet now trembled in her hands, stared at her with eyes wide as saucers. His expensive suit looked completely out of place beside the simple country lake, but his expression was raw, unguarded, human. Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family. Enjoy the story. He started then stopped. His voice cracked like a teenage boy's, not the confident tone of a man who commanded boardrooms and controlled empires. "You're the girl." Serena's fingers traced the edges of the photograph. She remembered that day so clearly now. The city volunteers had come to their village when she was 8 years old. They brought fresh water, medicine, and hope to families like hers who had nothing. A kind woman with gentle eyes had taken pictures of the children playing. But this man, this stranger in his tailored coat and polished shoes, had been carrying her picture all these years. "Why? I don't understand," she said, though her heart was already racing with possibilities that seemed too wild to believe. Kalen took a step closer, and she could smell his cologne mixed with something else. Something that reminded her of loneliness, though she couldn't explain why. "My mother took this picture," he said softly. "She died when I was 16, and I found it among her things. I kept it because—" He paused, searching for words that made sense. "Because that little girl looked like she had something I'd never seen before." "What's that?" "Pure joy. Real happiness. The kind money can't buy." Serena felt tears prick her eyes. She thought about her childhood, about the leaking roof and the empty cupboards, about her grandmother's gentle hands mending their clothes by candlelight night after night. They'd had nothing, less than nothing, but they'd had love. "I used to wonder who she was," Kalen continued. "Sometimes I'd look at that picture and imagine what her life was like. If she was happy, if she ever thought about the day that photo was taken." The irony hit Serena like a physical blow. While she'd spent years dreaming of a love that would see past her poverty, he'd been carrying her face in his wallet, not knowing she was real. "This doesn't make sense," she said, though her voice lacked conviction. Deep down, something ancient and knowing whispered that it made perfect sense, that some connections transcend logic and leap straight into the realm of destiny. Kalen's hand moved toward the photograph, then stopped. "May I?" She nodded, watching as his fingers brushed against hers while he took the wallet back. The touch sent electricity up her arm, and she saw him feel it too from the way his breath hitched. "I've looked for you," he admitted. "Not seriously, not like hiring detectives or anything crazy like that. But every time I traveled, every time I saw a village or a small town, I wondered if you were there. And now I am. And now you are." The weight of the moment settled between them, like a bridge neither had expected to cross. Serena thought about the gossip that would spread through Ravenwood Hills by tomorrow. The accusations. The whispers about the poor girl who'd caught a rich man's eye. But looking into Kalen's face, she saw something that stopped her fears cold. He wasn't looking at her like she was a novelty or a charity case. He was looking at her like she was the answer to a question he'd been asking his whole life. "What happens now?" she asked. Before he could answer, voices echoed across the water. Her grandmother's voice, calling her name. Time was running out. The spell of this impossible moment was about to break. Kalen stepped back, slipping the wallet into his coat. but his eyes never left hers. "Now," he said, "everything changes." As Serena turned to hurry back toward her grandmother's voice, one thought burned in her mind like fire. If fate had brought them together once through a photograph, what else did destiny have planned for them? But she had no idea that the biggest shock was yet to come. Because tomorrow, when Kalen returned to the village, he would bring with him a truth that would shake the foundations of everything she believed about her own past. What could this truth be? And how would it change both their lives forever? The floorboards creaked under Serena's bare feet as she rushed into the cottage that night, her heart still racing from the impossible encounter by the lake. But instead of finding her grandmother asleep, she discovered the old woman sitting by the dying fire, her weathered hands clutching a faded letter. "Grandmother, what's wrong?" Serena asked, noticing the tears streaming down the woman's wrinkled cheeks. Eleanor Devil looked up with eyes that had seen too much sorrow. "Child, sit down. There's something I should have told you years ago." A chill ran down her spine. "What does that mean?" "It means tomorrow morning, their security team is coming to the village. They're going to make offers that aren't really offers. They're going to use intimidation, pressure, whatever it takes to get people to sign those papers." Serena thought about the elderly couples who lived down the road, about the families with small children, about her own grandmother with her weak heart and stubborn pride. They can't do that. This is America. People have rights. Rights don't mean much when you can't afford lawyers to protect them. And these people, they know how to operate just inside the legal boundaries. Kalen's voice was bitter. "I've seen them do it before in other towns. They make life so difficult that people give up and take whatever money is offered just to escape. Then stop them. You're a billionaire. You have power. Not enough. Not anymore." He looked at her with eyes full of pain. Unless what? Unless I can convince the board that I have a legitimate personal interest in preserving this land. Something that would make destroying it bad for business." Serena felt a trap closing around her, though she couldn't yet see its shape. "What kind of personal interest?" Kalen's next words came out barely above a whisper. "If I were to announce my engagement to a local resident, someone with deep family ties to the area, someone whose story would generate sympathy in the media." The implication hit her like a physical blow. "You want me to pretend to be your fiancé?" "Not pretend. I want you to actually marry me." The proposal should have been romantic, should have been the culmination of everything they'd been building toward. Instead, it felt like a business transaction wrapped in desperate necessity. "You're asking me to marry you to save my village. I'm asking you to marry me because I love you and because it's the only way I can protect everyone you care about." Serena stared at him, trying to process the impossibility of it all. Marriage to save her home. Love tangled up with corporate politics. A fairy tale that came with strings attached. "And if I say no?" Kalen's silence was answer enough. But before she could respond, headlights cut through the darkness. A long black car was pulling up to her grandmother's cottage, and Serena could see figures getting out. "They're early," Kalen breathed, his face going pale. As Serena watched in horror, she realized the choice had been taken out of her hands. The security team wasn't waiting until morning. They were starting tonight, and they were starting with her family. The sound of car doors slamming echoed across the lake like gunshots. Serena's heart hammered against her ribs as she saw three men in dark suits walking toward her grandmother's cottage, their movements sharp and purposeful. "We have to stop them," she whispered, but Kalen's hand caught her arm. "Wait. If they see us together, it'll only make things worse for your grandmother." Through the cottage's lit window, Serena could see her grandmother opening the door. Even from a distance, Eleanor looked tiny and fragile compared to the men on her doorstep. Have you ever watched someone you love walk into danger while you stood helpless? That's the agony that tore through Serena as she watched the scene unfold. What do they want with her? Serena demanded. Information. Pressure points. They'll try to find out what matters most to her so they know exactly how to apply leverage tomorrow. Kalen's voice was tight with anger. I should have known they'd start early. I should have protected her. One of the men was now standing inside the cottage, his broad frame blocking most of the doorway. Serena could see her grandmother gesturing, probably offering tea out of politeness, not understanding the true nature of her visitors. "I can't just stand here," Serena said, pulling away from Kalen's grip. "Serena, no. If you go in there now, you'll only confirm that I've been meeting with you. It'll give them exactly the ammunition they need." "Then what do you suggest? That I let them terrorize an old woman?" Before Kalen could answer, they heard raised voices from the cottage. Not shouting, but the kind of firm, aggressive tones that made threats sound like friendly advice. "That's it," Serena said, starting toward the house. This time, Kalen didn't try to stop her. Instead, he fell in a step beside her, his jaw set with determination. "If we're doing this, we do it smart," he said. "Follow my lead." They approached the cottage just as one of the suited men was saying, "Mrs. Dovell, I think you misunderstand the gravity of your situation." Serena burst through the door with Kalen close behind. "Grandmother, is everything all right?" The three men turned, and Serena immediately understood why Kalen had been afraid. These weren't just lawyers or business representatives. They had the hard eyes and careful postures of people accustomed to violence. "Miss Dovell, I presume," said the tallest man, his smile cold as winter. "How convenient. We were just discussing your family's future." "Were you?" Serena kept her voice steady, though inside she was trembling. "And what business is that of yours?" "Our business is helping families like yours make smart financial decisions. Your grandmother was just telling us how difficult things have been lately. Medical bills, maintenance on this old house, the rising cost of everything." Serena looked at her grandmother, whose face had gone pale. Had Eleanor mentioned her health problems? The medication she could barely afford? "We're managing just fine," Serena said. "Are you?" Another man stepped forward, pulling out a tablet. "Because our research shows this property is heavily mortgaged. Your grandmother took out a loan 2 years ago to pay for her heart surgery. The payments are 3 months behind." The words hit Serena like a slap. Her grandmother had never mentioned any of this. "Eleanor," she whispered, her grandmother's eyes filled with tears. "I didn't want to worry you, child. I thought I could handle on my own." "How much?" Serena asked the men, though she dreaded the answer. $27,000. Plus interest and penalties, of course. The man's smile widened. "But here's the good news. We're prepared to offer you $50,000 for this property. Enough to pay off the debt and leave you with a nice nest egg to start fresh somewhere else." "Somewhere else." Serena's voice rose. "This is our home. Miss Dovell, let me be clear about something." The tall man put away his friendly facade. "This sale is going to happen. The only question is whether you participate willingly and profit from it, or whether you fight it and lose everything." That's when Kalen stepped out of the shadows. "Gentlemen," he said, his voice carrying the authority of someone born to command, "I don't believe we've been introduced." The change in the room was instant. All three men straightened, their aggressive postures shifting to something resembling respect. "Mr. Armand," the tall man said, clearly caught off guard. "We weren't expecting you." Obviously, Kalen moved to stand beside Serena, close enough that their shoulders touched. "Perhaps you could explain why you're conducting business meetings in the middle of the night?" "We were simply following up on the paperwork we sent today, making sure Mrs. Dovell understood the terms of our offer." "By threatening her?" Kalen's voice dropped to a dangerous level. "By revealing private financial information to intimidate her?" "Sir, we were just trying to help her understand her situation." "Her situation," Kalen said slowly, "is that she's family." The silence that followed was deafening. Serena felt Kalen's hand brush against hers, a silent request for trust. "Family," the tall man repeated. "Miss Dovell is my fiancée," Kalen announced, his voice carrying across the small room like a bell. "Which makes this property part of our family holdings. Permanently." Serena's breath caught. He'd done it. He'd made the choice she couldn't make, backed them both into a corner they couldn't escape. The three men exchanged glances, clearly thrown off their prepared script. "Sir, we had no idea you were personally involved. Now you do. So I suggest you return to the city and inform the board that the Ravenwood Hills project has encountered an unexpected complication. But, sir, the development timeline has just been extended indefinitely." Kalen's tone left no room for argument. You're dismissed. The men gathered their papers and tablets, their movements hurried and awkward. As they filed toward the door, the tall man paused. Congratulations on your engagement, Mr. Armand. I'm sure the board will be very interested to hear about this development. What secrets would they uncover? And how far would they go to destroy a love that threatened their plans? The photograph fell from Margaret Blackwood's manicured fingers like a death sentence. Across the polished mahogany table, 12 board members stared at the image in stunned silence. It showed Serena and Kalen in what appeared to be an intimate embrace. But Margaret's cruel smile suggested she saw something entirely different. Gentlemen, Margaret announced, her voice cutting through the boardroom like a blade. Meet your CEO's so-called fiancée, a girl who's been meeting secretly with multiple men from the city over the past 6 months. The lie was so bold, so unexpected, that even Kalen sat frozen for a moment. He'd walked into this emergency board meeting expecting questions about business strategy, not a character assassination of the woman he was learning to love. Have you ever watched someone you care about get destroyed by lies while you sat powerless to stop it? That's exactly what Kalen felt as Margaret continued her ruthless presentation. Our investigation reveals that Miss Duvall has been entertaining various gentlemen from our company and others, always in exchange for gifts, money, or promises of advancement for her family. Margaret's fingers drummed against the table. It seems our CEO has been manipulated by a very clever young woman who saw an opportunity. That's absolutely false, Kalen said, his voice deadly calm despite the rage building inside him. Is it? Then perhaps you can explain these bank deposits. Margaret slid another document across the table. $5,000, deposited into Eleanor Duvall's account every month for the past year. Care to guess where that money originated? Kalen's blood ran cold as he recognized the account numbers. Someone had been using company funds to make payments to Serena's grandmother, creating a paper trail that made their relationship look like a long-term business arrangement. I never authorized these payments, he said. Of course you didn't. But they were authorized by someone with access to your accounts. Someone who wanted to create evidence of an ongoing financial relationship between you and this girl's family. The trap was so sophisticated, so thoroughly planned, that Kalen almost admired its cruelty. Almost. You did this, he realized. You've been setting this up for months. Margaret's smile was arctic. I've been protecting this company from your increasingly poor judgment. Did you really think we'd let you throw away a billion-dollar development project for some village girl? She's not just some village girl. She's family. Ah, yes, the mysterious cousin story. How convenient that you discovered this family connection right when you needed to justify your relationship. Margaret opened another folder. Except our genealogical research shows no blood relation between Catherine Armand and any Duvall family in the region. Kalen's world tilted. That's impossible. Her grandmother showed us documents. Documents that were forged, Kalen. Quite expertly, I might add. Someone went to great trouble to create a fictional family history. Margaret leaned forward. The question is whether you were part of the deception or just another victim. The other board members were watching this exchange like spectators at a car crash. Some looked genuinely shocked. Others seemed pleased to see their so brought low. Even if that were true, Kalen said carefully, it doesn't change my feelings for her. Feelings that have cost this company $50 million in delays and legal complications. Feelings that have put our shareholders at risk. Margaret stood, her tall frame imposing in the expensive suit. The board has taken a vote, Kalen. You have 24 hours to end this engagement and approve the Ravenwood Hills development, or we'll remove you as CEO and proceed without you. On what grounds? Breach of fiduciary duty. Compromise judgment due to personal entanglements. Take your pick. Margaret gathered her papers with clinical efficiency. Oh, and Kalen, your security detail has been temporarily reassigned. We felt it was important for Miss Duvall to understand the precarious nature of her situation. The threat was clear. Without protection, Serena was vulnerable to whatever pressure the board wanted to apply. You can't do this, Kalen said, But even as the words left his mouth, he knew they were wrong. The board could do exactly this, and they were already in motion. 24 hours, Margaret repeated. Choose wisely. As the board members filed out, leaving Kalen alone in the vast conference room, he realized the stakes had just escalated beyond anything he'd imagined. This wasn't just about saving a village or protecting a relationship anymore. This was war, and the first casualty was going to be the truth. But back in Ravenwood Hills, Serena was about to discover that some battles can't be won with money or power. Sometimes, the only weapon you have is the courage to stand up and fight, even when the odds are impossible. Because Margaret Blackwood had made one critical mistake in her calculations. She'd underestimated what a poor girl with nothing left to lose was capable of doing. The men arrived at sunset, their black SUVs kicking up clouds of dust as they rolled through Ravenwood Hills like a mechanized plague. Serena watched from her grandmother's window as they parked in front of every house, their occupants emerging with clipboards, cameras, and the kind of cold professionalism that turned neighbors into statistics. They're not wasting time, Eleanor observed, her weathered hands gripping her teacup so tightly her knuckles had gone white. Serena's phone buzzed with a text from Kalen. Board voted. I have until tomorrow night. Stay inside. Trust no one. Eleanor gasped. You sold us out. I try to protect you. The money was supposed to give you options, help you relocate somewhere safe before the acquisition became aggressive. Marcus ran his hands through his graying hair. But then Kalen Armand started showing up here personally, and everything got complicated. Complicated how? Because he wasn't supposed to fall in love with you, Serena. He was supposed to use you to make the acquisition easier, then move on. But the board realized he'd gone rogue, and now they're trying to eliminate both of you. The pieces of the impossible puzzle were finally falling into place, but the picture they formed was more terrifying than Serena had ever imagined. The engagement, she said slowly. It was never about saving the village. It was about controlling the mineral rights. Exactly. As Kalen's wife, you'd have legal standing to influence the company's decisions about this land. But as a discredited gold digger who seduced him for money, Marcus didn't need to finish the sentence. They could do whatever they want, Serena completed. A new sound reached them from outside. Not cars this time, but helicopters. The distant thrum of rotors grew louder, accompanied by the harsh glare of searchlights sweeping across the village. They're not waiting until tomorrow, Marcus said grimly. They're moving tonight. Through the window, Serena could see families being escorted from their homes, suitcases in hand, defeat written across their faces. The systematic evacuation of Ravenwood Hills had begun. Where's Kalen? She asked, suddenly terrified that the man she was learning to love had been silenced forever. Marcus checked his phone, his face grim. According to my contacts inside the company, he's been detained for questioning about his recent business decisions. Detained where? Somewhere you can't reach him. The trap was complete. Serena was alone. Her community was being destroyed, and the man who'd promised to protect her had been neutralized. But as she watched her neighbors being forced from their homes, something hardened inside her. They thought they'd broken her spirit by turning the village against her. They thought they'd won by isolating her from everyone she loved. They were wrong, because sometimes the most powerful weapon a person can have is nothing left to lose. Uncle Marcus, she said, her voice steady for the first time in hours. Tell me everything you know about that mineral deposit. Serena, what are you thinking? I'm thinking it's time to stop playing defense. Outside, the helicopters continued their ominous circle, and the evacuation continued. But inside the cottage, a poor girl who'd lost everything was about to discover what she was truly capable of. The game was about to change, and this time, she was going to make the rules. The boardroom had never felt more like a tomb. Kalen sat in the chair where his father had once commanded respect, his hands bound with zip ties, his expensive suit wrinkled from 12 hours of questioning that had felt more like psychological torture. Margaret Blackwood stood at the head of the table like a queen pronouncing sentence, her cold eyes reflecting the city lights that sparkled beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows. Sign the papers, Kalen, she said for what felt like the 100th time. Authorize the Ravenwood Hills development. End your ridiculous engagement, and we can all move forward. No, he said, though his voice was hoarse from arguing. Still protecting your little village girl? How noble. Margaret nodded to one of her associates, who placed a tablet in front of Kaylin. The screen showed a live feed from Ravenwood Hills, where the forced evacuation was nearly complete. Have you ever watched helplessly as everything you tried to protect crumbled before your eyes? That's the agony Kaylin felt as he saw families loading their possessions into trucks, their homes already marked for demolition. She played you, Margaret continued conversationally. The innocent act, the reluctant engagement, the touching family story. All of it was calculated to manipulate you into exactly this position. You're lying. Am I? Then explain why she's been meeting with her Uncle Marcus for months. The same Uncle Marcus who's been feeding us geological surveys and property assessments. Margaret smiled at Kaylin's shock. Oh yes, we know about Marcus Hartwell, one of our most valuable assets in the region. The betrayal cut deeper than any physical wound. If Serenia had been working with someone inside the company, if her family had been part of the setup from the beginning, I can see you're starting to understand, Margaret observed. The poor village girl, the mysterious family connection, the convenient engagement to stop our development plans. It was all theater, Kaylin, and you were the only one who didn't know you were watching a performance. Before Kaylin could respond, an assistant burst into the room without knocking. Ma'am, we have a problem. Margaret's composed expression cracked slightly. What kind of problem? It's the girl. She's not in the village anymore. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. What do you mean she's not in the village? Our teams conducted a complete sweep. Serenia Duvall is gone. So is her grandmother and her Uncle Marcus. Margaret's facade finally shattered completely. Find them. Now. That's not all. The assistant continued nervously. Someone hacked into our geological survey database. All the files related to the Ravenwood Hills mineral deposits have been copied and distributed to environmental groups, news outlets, and government regulatory agencies. Kaylin felt a surge of something he hadn't experienced in hours. Hope. Margaret was staring at the assistant like he'd just announced the apocalypse. How is that possible? Those files are encrypted, stored on secure servers. Someone with administrative access released them. Someone who knew exactly what they were looking for. The implication hung in the air like smoke from a fire that was about to consume everything Margaret had built. Marcus, she breathed. That son of a bitch turned on us. But Kaylin was thinking about something else entirely. If Serenia had access to the geological surveys, if she understood what was really at stake, then she wasn't just running away. She was going on the offensive. His phone, which had been confiscated hours ago, suddenly rang from across the room where Margaret's assistants had placed it. The sound echoed through the tense boardroom like a bell tolling. Answer it, Kaylin said quietly. I don't think so. Answer it, or I'll make sure every newspaper in the country knows that Armand Corporation has been holding its own CEO prisoner. Margaret hesitated, then nodded to one of her associates. The phone was brought over and placed on speaker. Serenia's voice filled the room, clear and strong and absolutely fearless. Hello, Margaret. I hope you're enjoying your evening. The silence that followed was deafening. Miss Duvall, Margaret finally said, her voice carefully controlled. How unexpected. Is it? You've been planning this for 3 years. Watching me, pay my family, setting up this entire elaborate scheme. I think it's time we had an honest conversation. I'm not sure what you mean. I mean the billion-dollar mineral deposit under my village. I mean the environmental impact reports you've been hiding. I mean the fact that your development project will contaminate the water supply for 6 surrounding counties. Serenia's voice grew stronger with each accusation. Should I continue? Kaylin watched Margaret's face cycle through surprise, anger, and calculation. You're making serious allegations without any proof, Margaret said. Actually, I have plenty of proof. Thanks to Uncle Marcus, I now have copies of every geological survey, every environmental assessment, and every internal memo discussing the health risks you've been covering up. There was a pause. Then Serenia's voice came back with deadly certainty. I also have security footage of your people threatening elderly residents and forging bank documents to frame me as some kind of gold digger. The room was so quiet that Kalen could hear his own heartbeat. "What do you want?" Margaret asked finally. "Well, I want is simple. Release Kalen immediately. Cancel the Ravenwood Hills development permanently. And resign your position on the board before I release all this evidence to the authorities. And if I refuse, then at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning, every major news outlet in the country will receive a comprehensive report about Armand Corporation's illegal activities. Environmental groups will file lawsuits that will tie up your company in court for decades. And the families you've been terrorizing will become the faces of corporate abuse on every television screen in America." Kalen had never been more proud of anyone in his life. "You have 1 hour to decide," Serena continued. "Oh, and Margaret, the next time you want to destroy someone's life, make sure they don't have anything left to lose. It makes them very dangerous." The line went dead, leaving the boardroom in stunned silence. Margaret looked around at her associates, her board members, her carefully constructed empire of intimidation and control. For the first time since Kalen had known her, she looked uncertain. "She's bluffing," she said, but her voice lacked conviction. "Is she?" Kalen asked quietly. "Because the woman I know doesn't bluff. She just wins." Outside the boardroom windows, the city lights continued to sparkle, but inside, the balance of power had just shifted completely. The poor village girl had outmaneuvered the corporate empire, and she was just getting started. The sun rose over Ravenwood Hills like a benediction, painting the empty houses in shades of gold and possibility. Serena stood on the hill overlooking her village, Kalen's hand warm in hers, watching as the moving trucks began to reverse their journey. Families were coming home. Margaret Blackwood's resignation had made the morning news. The Ravenwood Hills development had been permanently canceled, and the environmental protection agencies were already establishing the area as a conservation zone, ensuring the mineral deposits would remain untouched while the land stayed in the hands of the people who'd loved it for generations. "I still can't believe you pulled it off," Kalen said, his voice full of wonder and admiration. "I had help," Serena replied, nodding toward where her Uncle Marcus was helping the Henderson family unload their belongings. "And I had something to fight for. Have you ever discovered that the thing you thought would destroy you actually gave you the strength to save everything you loved?" That's what Serena learned during the darkest moments of her battle with the corporate giant. "The board officially voted to reinstate me as CEO this morning," Kalen said. "Apparently, having your corruption exposed on national television makes you very eager to cooperate. And what's the first thing you're going to do as the newly reinstated CEO?" Kalen turned to face her, his expression serious. "I'm going to ask you a question I should have asked properly the first time." He dropped to one knee right there on the hill, with the village spread out below them and the morning light making everything look like a fairy tale. "Serena Duvall," he said, his voice carrying across the quiet countryside. "Will you marry me? Not to save the village, not to stop a development project, not for any reason except that I love you and I want to spend the rest of my life proving that some things are more valuable than money." The ring he pulled from his pocket wasn't the heavy family heirloom from before. This one was simple, elegant, perfect. A single diamond that caught the sunrise and threw it back in tiny rainbows. "Yes," she said, and the word felt like coming home. As he slipped the ring onto her finger, the sound of applause reached them from the village below. Their neighbors had gathered in the square, no longer suspicious or hostile, but celebrating the return of their community and the love story that had saved it all. "There's just one thing," Serena said as Kalen stood and wrapped his arms around her. "What's that?" "I want a long engagement. I want time to really know you, to learn your favorite foods and your worst fears and what you dream about when you can't sleep." "How long?" "Long enough to be sure this is real. Long enough to build something that can survive anything the world throws at us." Kalen's smile was brighter than the morning sun. "I can live with that. In fact, I'm looking forward to it." As they walked hand in hand back toward the village, Serena thought about how much had changed in just a few days. She discovered family secrets, faced down corporate bullies, learned the true value of community, and found a love that was built on something stronger than fate or circumstance. She found a love built on choice. What are you thinking about? Kaylin asked. I'm thinking about that little girl in the photograph. The one who believed in fairy tales and happy endings. And I'm thinking she was right to believe. The crowd in the village square grew larger as they approached, and Serena could see her grandmother in the center of it all, directing the celebration with the efficiency of someone who'd been planning community gatherings her entire life. Mrs. Patterson was there too, tears in her eyes as she hugged Serena tight. I'm sorry I doubted you, dear. I should have known better. You had every reason to doubt, Serena replied. But that's what makes forgiveness so powerful. As the celebration continued around them, with neighbors sharing food and stories and laughter, Kaylin leaned down to whisper in her ear. So what happens now? Now we live, Serena said simply. We build our life together, we take care of our community, and we prove that love really can conquer all. Even billion-dollar corporations. Especially billion-dollar corporations. Their laughter mingled with the sounds of celebration, and as the sun climbed higher over Ravenwood Hills, painting everything in warm golden light, it was impossible not to believe in happy endings. But more importantly, it was impossible not to believe in new beginnings. Because sometimes the greatest love stories aren't about finding your prince charming or your perfect princess. Sometimes they're about finding someone worth fighting for and discovering that you're worth fighting for too. Sometimes they're about learning that the most precious things in life can't be bought or sold or taken away by force. They can only be earned through courage, protected through sacrifice, and kept through the kind of love that chooses to stay even when staying gets difficult. As Serena looked around at her community, her family, her future husband, she realized that she'd found something rarer than any mineral deposit, more valuable than any corporate empire. She found home, and that was a treasure no one could ever take away. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss our inspiring love stories. Share your thoughts in the comments below and let us know what you believed in most about Serena and Kaylin's journey. Your stories inspire others who might be facing their own impossible battles. Because sometimes all we need is proof that love really can win, and that even the poorest girl with the biggest heart can change the world. What other love stories would you like to see? Tell us in the comments. And remember, every fairy tale begins with someone brave enough to believe in happy endings.